You are lying still now, perhaps in bed, with the quiet weight of night pressing against the edges of your room, perhaps with the hum of a lamp nearby, or the softness of a blanket drawn close. Wherever you are, the world is slower now, muted, dim. Your eyes feel heavy, but your mind lingers, searching for something gentle enough to carry you away. So let me take you somewhere else. Not forward, but backward. Not into the brightness of a morning, but into the hushed and haunted twilight of history. Tonight we drift toward Baghdad in the year 1258, when the Mongols came riding from the east. A story both luminous and terrible, like firelight through smoke. But do not worry. You do not need to stay awake for every step of it. You may drift. You may wander. You may leave the tale half heard and still. When you wake, it will be waiting. Quiet, unchanged. History is patient. History does not mind. So close your eyes, if you like, and let a question settle with you. What happens when a city believes itself eternal, yet meets an empire that bows to no eternity? And if the thought is too heavy, here's a softer one. At least you won't need to saddle a horse tonight. If quiet history like this helps you rest or wander, consider subscribing. It lets this small corner of calm keep growing. And if you're still awake, share your time and place below. I'd love to know who's listening tonight. Now take a breath and follow the dust of the steppes, where the horsemen ride toward the heart of the world. You move across the plains of Central Asia, endless and without edge. The horizon seems always out of reach, a silver line beneath an ocean of sky. The grass is brittle, winter-bitten, sharp beneath hooves. And everywhere you hear the rhythm of horses. The beat of their hooves is like the pulse of the earth itself. Steady, ancient, unrelenting. This is the empire of the Mongols, sprawling, restless, stitched together by speed and fear. A people who learned not just to survive the steppe, but to master it, to turn its vast emptiness into a weapon sharper than any sword. From the Yellow River to the Caspian Sea, their banners already stretch, heavy with dust and shadow. The year is 1258, and Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis himself, rides at the center of this storm. His face is stern, his eyes narrow against the wind, his thoughts perhaps on conquest, perhaps on legacy. He has been tasked with moving westward to bring new lands under Mongol order. And so the empire presses onward, as though the horizon itself must bow. You feel the cold. You smell the sweat of horses, the leather of saddles, the oil of bows kept taut in the winter air. Men ride in silence, trained to obey without words, their discipline as chilling as their swiftness. Behind them follow herds of animals, sheep, goats, oxen, food that walks alongside the army. For the Mongols are not bound to cities or walls. They bring their world with them, mobile, fluid, impossible to pin down. They have crossed mountains, rivers, deserts. They have crushed kingdoms already. In Persia, they broke strongholds one after another. In the east, they toppled cities thought unbreakable. And now they look west, toward the land of the Abbasid Caliphate, whose jewel, Baghdad, still gleams with reputation, though its walls may not be as strong as its pride. Imagine the size of it. Some say Hulagu's host numbers 200,000, though truth slips through the gaps of memory. Still, it is vast, so vast that when it moves, the earth trembles, the grass itself disappears beneath the tide. Alongside them travel engineers from China, men who understand the craft of sieges. Timber is hauled, rope is coiled. The weapons of the future ride on the backs of camels. The empire is not just Mongol. It is a mosaic. Turks, Persians, Chinese, Armenians, each drawn into the orbit of power, and with them ride shadows, rumors spreading faster than hoofbeats. Stories of cities burned to ash, of rulers trampled beneath horses, of rivers choked with bodies, perhaps exaggerated, perhaps not. But fear is a weapon sharper than steel. and Hulagu knows how to wield it. You drift closer now, into the heart of this army. Fires glow at night like scattered constellations fallen to earth. Men warm their hands against embers, whispering in tongues that twist together. Some laugh, some sharpen blades, some hum songs that sound more like wind than melody. Horses stamp and snort, restless, impatient to move again. And above it all, the sky is vast, endless, indifferent. Stars look down like distant witnesses, cold and unmoved. Do you wonder what it feels like to ride with such certainty? To believe the world is open before you, waiting to be taken? There is no hesitation in this host, no pause to ask if what lies ahead should be spared. Only the road matters, and the road points toward Baghdad. For centuries, the Mongols were a people the empires of the south ignored, dismissing them as wild horsemen from the steppe. Now the pattern is reversed. It is the empires who tremble, and the horsemen who write the world's fate. As you drift beside them, you feel the pull of destiny, a kind of inevitability, like a river moving toward its sea. The Mongols move west, not out of whim, but out of command. Hulagu carries an order from his brother, the great Khan Mongol, who rules from far away in Karakoram. His instructions are simple: subdue the Islamic lands, break the fortresses, and make the world bow. The Caliph of Baghdad, al-Mustasim, has been warned. Letters have been sent, demands for submission delivered, but pride and faith blind him. Baghdad has stood for centuries, has thrived while others fell. Surely it will endure again. Surely God will protect his city. So he refuses, and so the horses ride closer. Step by step, you see the distance between the two worlds shrinking. Between the horsemen of the East, hardened by endless travel, and the city of scholars and gardens, proud but unprepared. You sense the collision before it happens, like thunder felt before it is heard. At times the Mongols halt, gathering strength. They move with the rhythm of nature, not of clocks. Winter slows them, rivers guide them, pastures decide their pace. But always, the direction is the same: west, toward the Tigris, toward Baghdad. You breathe with them, you ride with them, you feel the weight of their certainty. And when you close your eyes, you see not just the men, but the idea they carry, that no wall is unbreakable, no city eternal. The night deepens, fires sink to embers, horses quiet. Men drift into sleep beneath the stars, untroubled, unshaken. Tomorrow they will rise, mount, and ride again. And with each mile, Baghdad grows closer. You wonder, did the people of Baghdad feel the earth trembling yet? Did they hear the rumors carried by merchants, see the dust clouds on the horizon, or did they cling to the comfort of their golden past, believing the world's learning and beauty would shield them? You do not yet know. Tonight you only ride with the storm. The steppe wind chills your skin. The hooves speed on. The stars fade into dawn. And Baghdad waits, unaware of the shadow about to fall. You step away now from the dust of the steppe, away from the endless beat of hooves. The horizon softens, the grasslands fade, and another vision begins to form. A city rises in the mind's eye. A city whose name has lived in the whispers of poets and travelers, whose memory glows even when its stones lie quiet. You are walking toward Baghdad. It does not greet you with silence, not yet. The year is still 2058, but the city is alive in this moment, rich in its twilight. Imagine its gates opening, the walls towering like guardians of centuries past. You pass beneath carved arches, the air shifting from the wild openness of the plains to the enclosed perfume of civilization. Inside, the world is crowded, layered, overflowing. Baghdad has been called many things: the city of peace, the jewel of the Abbasids, the navel of the earth. Its founding centuries earlier, under Caliph al-Mansur, was more than an act of power. It was a declaration of order. A round city, carefully designed, a center from which knowledge and faith might radiate. Though the centuries have worn down that vision, you still feel its bones beneath your feet. The streets coil and spill like rivers. Markets hum with sound, merchants bargaining in voices thick with spice and heat. You smell cinnamon, pepper, frankincense. The clamor of donkeys mixes with the laughter of children. Cloaked scholars hurry between mosques and libraries, scrolls tucked beneath their arms, silk glitters in the sun, carried on traders' shoulders. Carpets roll out in colors so deep they seem to drink the daylight. You pause, listening. The call to prayer threads through the city, weaving sound through stone, reminding you that here, faith is not background. It is breath. Domes rise, their turquoise tiles catching the light. Minarets stand like candles around them. The people stop, bow, murmur, and in that rhythm you feel a unity that has carried the city through centuries of triumph and threat. But as you walk deeper, the light bends differently. There is wear beneath the brilliance. The Abbasid Caliphate, once the center of the world, is no longer what it was. Time has chipped away at its power, at its reach. Once, armies stretched from the Maghreb to the Indus, commanded in the caliph's name. Now, the title is more symbol than sword. Baghdad remains radiant, but its strength has thinned, like an old cloth that still shines but tears easily at the edges. You pass through the House of Wisdom, the great library that has for centuries gathered knowledge from Greece, Persia, India, and beyond. Here, men once translated Aristotle and Galen, measured stars, studied medicine and law. You can almost hear the rustle of parchment, the scratching of pens, the murmured debates of philosophers leaning over open texts. The very air smells of ink and candle wax, of paper worn soft by use. But you notice, too, a quiet emptiness. Not gone, but dimmed. The energy is not what it was in its golden prime. Some shelves stand dusty, some scrolls untouched. Scholars argue still, but fewer, and with less urgency. Baghdad is still Baghdad, glorious, famous, envied, but like an elder whose stories outshine their present strength, it is leaning more on memory than on power. Outside again, the river greets you. The Tigris curves through the heart of the city, steady, silver, carrying boats, heavy with goods and voices. It has been lifeblood for centuries, a highway of trade and nourishment, a mirror for the city's domes and palaces. The water flows endlessly, as if promising that Baghdad will endure as long as it flows. Yet you, drifting as you are, know how fragile that promise can be. Wander through the palace district, and you see the court of Caliph al-Mustasam. Gold threads shimmer on robes, courtiers bow with practiced grace, servants carry trays of fruit and sherbet. The caliph himself sits enthroned, slight, scholarly, more accustomed to poetry than to war. He is not cruel, but neither is he strong. His faith in God is deep, his trust in tradition unshaken. Yet around him swirl voices of discord, advisors competing, factions whispering, each certain of their own wisdom. The court glitters, but the ground beneath is unsteady. Baghdad is no longer defended by the strength of empire, but by the belief in its own renown, as though prestige were a shield. Outside the palace, merchants and artisans still thrive, but in the barracks, the soldiers grow restless, underpaid, uncertain. They can defend walls, but can they stand against the storm gathering on the plains? You hear whispers in the streets, tales carried by traders from Persia, of a force moving westward, of horsemen who burn and scatter all before them. Some laugh at the stories, dismissing them as exaggerations. Others tremble, remembering what befell cities once thought secure, but life continues. Markets open, prayers are called, lanterns are lit at dusk. The city has seen threats before. Why should this be different? Yet, you feel it. Beneath the noise of daily life, there is a tremor. an unease. People live as though tomorrow will be as yesterday, but in the spaces between their words, in the pauses of their steps, lies doubt. You cross a bridge at twilight, the river dark beneath you, lanterns swaying in the breeze. The city glows around you, domes lit by the last light of the sun. It is beautiful, achingly beautiful, and yet you know what waits beyond the horizon. Baghdad, in its golden twilight, is not a ruin yet. It is a place of gardens, of courtyards where roses bloom and fountains murmur. It is a place where a poet might still find inspiration, where a physician might still heal the sick, where a child might laugh and chase pigeons in the square. It is alive, and because it is alive, it cannot imagine ending. But the steppe does not imagine, the horsemen do not dream. They move, they arrive. You sit at the edge of the riverbank as night falls. The city quiets around you. Somewhere, a musician plucks a lute. The notes drift like fragile stars above the hum of crickets. A family gathers by a lantern, children nodding against their mother's lap. The Caliph prays in his chambers, believing still that his city will be spared. You sit, you listen, you breathe, and you feel the weight of history pressing gently against your shoulder. For now, Baghdad is whole. Its walls stand, its markets flourish, its scholars read by candlelight. For now, the world is as it has been for centuries. But beyond night, beyond the silence of the steppe, a storm moves closer. The city does not yet know. But you, listening here, drifting between wakefulness and dream, you know. And so you stay a moment longer, watching lanterns flicker on the Tigris, holding the last image of Baghdad's twilight before the shadow begins to fall. You linger now in the palace at the heart of Baghdad. The air is hushed, perfumed faintly with rosewater and incense, but heavy too, as though silence itself presses down on the walls. You stand in the shadow of Caliph al-Mustasim. He is the 37th of his line, a descendant of al-Abbas, uncle of the Prophet. He wears the robe of his office, the turban that crowns him not only as ruler, but as symbol of unity for the faithful. Yet as you watch him seated upon his cushioned throne, you see not a commander but a figure adrift in ritual. His hands are fine, his beard neatly trimmed, his voice soft. He is a man more accustomed to reciting Quran, more at home with poets and scholars than with warriors and generals. The palace around him is a place of ceremony. Servants move with choreographed grace, bearing trays of sherbet, bowls of figs and dates. Courtiers bow deeply, whispering words of loyalty, while their eyes flicker sideways, measuring rivals. Gold catches the lamplight, casting patterns on the marble floors. The music of a qanun drifts faintly from another chamber, strings plucked to soothe the atmosphere. And yet, beneath the smooth surface, there is unease. Baghdad is a city of splendor, but its court is no longer a fortress of power. The caliph's authority is thinner than the silks draped behind him. His commands more often honored in form than in spirit. Real power is divided among emirs, viziers, generals, each pulling the fabric of the caliphate in different directions, each convinced of their own wisdom. You hear their debates, low and sharp. Some voices urge caution, whispering of the Mongols who advance from the east. A storm of horsemen, unlike any other. Submit, they say. Send gifts, bow enough to spare the city from fire. Others bristle with pride, insisting Baghdad cannot bend, that to submit would be to betray its history, its faith, its God. Surely the city of the caliphs, heart of Islam, cannot fall like any ordinary town. Surely divine protection stands as its wall. The caliph listens. He nods. He hesitates. You see him torn between counsel and conviction, between fear of dishonor and fear of destruction. He prays. He seeks signs. And in his uncertainty, decisions slow. Messages to the provinces are delayed. Orders are vague. The city waits for direction, but direction is clouded in indecision. You step into the private chambers, The caliph reclines upon embroidered cushions, reading verses aloud in a low voice. He is not without devotion, not without thought, but he believes too much in the permanence of his city, too much in the aura of the Abbasid name. Perhaps he imagines the Mongols will tire, will turn elsewhere, will see Baghdad as untouchable. Perhaps he believes alliances with neighboring rulers will hold, that soldiers will come if summoned. But you know what he does not. You know the riders are already on the march, that fortresses eastward have fallen, that allies hesitate to risk themselves for a caliph they no longer revere. You know that reputation is not a shield. Beyond the chambers, the court moves in patterns of intrigue. Viziers plot, emirs whisper of promises not kept. The caliph's dependence on his inner circle makes him vulnerable, and among them are men more interested in personal gain than in the city's survival. Some urge him to conserve his treasury rather than spend it on defense. Others assure him the Mongols are exaggerated, that fear itself is the enemy. You walk the halls and see the murals of past victories, of battles fought long ago, of caliphs commanding legions that once stretched across continents. The painted soldiers are fierce, their banners high, but in the courtyards outside, the real soldiers are fewer, less certain. They drill with their spears, their shields, their bows, but their morale wavers. They are not the armies of legend. They are men waiting for orders that never quite arrive. Even the common people sense the weakness. In the markets, merchants mutter that the caliph wastes time in prayer while neglecting walls and weapons. Some trust in God, believing faith will guard them. Others quietly prepare, gathering food, hiding coins, ready to flee if needed. Beneath the bustle, fear hums like a low string. You pause again at the caliph's side. He writes a letter, his script elegant, his words measured. A reply to Hulagu's demand for submission. He refuses. The ink dries. The words are sealed. And with that refusal, the path is set. Baghdad will not bend. Perhaps you wonder, was it pride? Was it faith? Was it the illusion that history could not shift, that the city of peace could never be breached? Perhaps it was all these at once, a man caught between the grandeur of his title and the frailty of his rule, unable to see that the storm on the horizon was unlike any before. Night falls again. The caliph withdraws, candles flickering around him. He prays long into the hours, lips moving in devotion. He believes he serves his people, believes he guards what is sacred. Yet you, standing nearby, know that history waits outside his gates. The palace walls echo with silence. Courtiers slip away to whisper in private corners. Guards lean on their spears, eyes drifting toward the distant east. Servants move more quickly, nervous, uncertain. Something heavy presses against the air, as though the city itself knows what its ruler cannot admit. You step into the gardens. The scent of jasmine and orange blossoms drifts through the night. Water trickles from marble fountains, cool and clear. The moonlight glitters on tiled paths. It is beautiful, fragile, aching with peace, but you see beyond it the dust rising on the plains, the engines of siege being assembled, the horses restless in their lines. The caliph dreams of protection, but the Mongols do not dream. You remain a moment longer, breathing the quiet of the garden, listening to the rustle of leaves, the trickle of water, the murmur of distant prayer. The city of peace sleeps, its ruler folded in devotion, its court divided, its people unaware of how thin the line between security and ruin has become. And then you turn your gaze eastward, where the horizon waits, where the storm draws ever closer. You leave the perfumed stillness of the caliphal garden and step once more into the horizon, where wind carries dust across the steppes. The horsemen move steadily westward, and at their center rides Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis. His face is stern in the frost, his breath turning to mist in the morning air. It is not war alone that he carries, but words. Before the hooves reach the gates, before the siege engines rise from timber, there comes the summons. The Mongol way is both simple and absolute. Submit and live. Resist and die. So the letters are written, orders and warnings, inked in hands hardened by conquest, carried by envoys whose very arrival chills the heart of cities. Baghdad receives such a summons now, a message that passes from camp to courier, from saddle to gate, until it rests upon the caliph's table. The words are sharp, unadorned, unbending. They speak of the great Khan's will, of Hulagu's command to bring the lands of Islam beneath his shadow. They remind the caliph of cities already broken. Rayeh, Nishapur, Merv, names whispered in Baghdad's streets with dread. The letters carry no threats that are not already proven. They are not promises, but memories, reminders that resistance brings only ash. You imagine the moment the letter is unsealed in the palace. Courtiers lean close, brows furrowed, mouths dry. The caliph reads aloud, his voice low, uncertain. The words hang in the air like smoke, heavy, acrid. Some in the chamber fall silent, others scoff, muttering that these are empty boasts. Still others urge submission, their eyes darting with fear. The Mongols demand recognition, tribute, surrender. They demand that the caliph himself bend the knee, an act unthinkable for one who bears the mantle of God's deputy. To submit would mean dishonor. To resist may mean destruction. The choice is clear to Hulagu, but not to Al-Mustasim. Envoys wait for an answer. Their presence is unnerving. They stand calm, assured, as though already certain of the city's fate. They wear furs stiff with frost, boots caked in steppe dust. They speak little, their silence heavier than their words, for they know they serve not only as messengers, but as omens, the shadow before the storm. You walk with them through the city. As they are led to their quarters, people stare, whisper, recoil. Children peek from behind their mothers' robes, frightened by these strangers whose faces are unreadable, whose eyes carry the cold of endless plains. Some throw insults, others look away. The envoys remain unmoved. They have walked through too many conquered cities to care for the opinions of this one. In the palace again, the debate grows heated. Advisors clash in words sharp as blades. One insists that the Mongols are ruthless beyond measure, that resistance is folly, that only submission can save lives. Another counters that Baghdad is sacred, that God would never allow its fall, that faith is stronger than fear. Pride and piety coil together until they are indistinguishable. The caliph listens, torn, as always, between voices. You watch him hesitate. He worries over his treasury, reluctant to spend gold to raise armies. He trusts in alliances, though those allies are far and unreliable. He leans on prayers, though prayers cannot mend walls or sharpen swords. His indecision stretches, and the envoys wait still. At last, a reply is formed. Courtiers draft words meant to deflect, to delay, to assert dignity without outright surrender. The letter sent back to Hulagu does not submit. It does not yield. It speaks of Baghdad's strength, of divine favor, of the caliph's place at the heart of the Muslim world. It is, in truth, a refusal, polite perhaps, but unmistakable. The envoys depart, carrying with them not gold, not promises, but defiance. Their departure is like a door closing, quietly but firmly, on the last chance of peace. You follow them back through the plains. They ride swiftly, their horses cutting across the earth with effortless rhythm. Behind them lies Baghdad, still shining, still unaware. Ahead lies Hulagu, waiting for their words. When they arrive, the Khan receives the letter with no surprise. His face does not flicker. He has seen this pride before. He has crushed it before. He summons his generals, his engineers, his soldiers. The march resumes. The summons has been refused, and the verdict is already written. Imagine the weight of that decision, a city that might have lived, now doomed by pride and hesitation. A caliph who believed himself untouchable, now marked for ruin. You drift through Baghdad once more. The people go about their days, unaware that the answer carried eastward has sealed their fate. Merchants haggle, scholars debate, children play by the river. The markets still bustle, the call to prayer still rises. The city believes in its eternity. But you know better. You hear the hooves, though they are still far. You smell the smoke of camps being built, though the wind has not yet carried it here. You feel the inevitability, heavy as stone. Night falls in Baghdad, lanterns glowing by the Tigris, casting trembling light across the water. But beyond the darkness, beyond the horizon, the summons has been refused, and the storm is gathering. The Caliph sleeps, his advisors whisper, his people dream. None can yet see how near the horsemen are, how close the shadow has come. You sit at the city's edge, listening to the silence between heartbeats. And in that silence, you hear the thunder of hooves approaching. The horizon is wide again, and the air feels colder, sharper. You have left the divided chambers of Baghdad's palace, and once more you find yourself upon the open earth, where decisions are not delayed, but carried out in rhythm with hooves. Here, there is no hesitation. Here, there is only the march. The Mongol host is vast. Some whisper 200,000 riders, others fewer, but numbers blur when so many move together. Even a smaller count would be overwhelming. An ocean of men and horses, waves that roll unstopped across the plains. They come not as a trickle, but as a flood. Dust rises around them, turning the sky pale and choking. It clings to beards, to furs, to saddles. It settles into lungs until even breath tastes of earth. At their center rides Hulagu Khan. Calm, deliberate, a commander shaped by lineage and by destiny. He has no doubt, no hesitation. His brother Mongol, the great Khan in distant Karakoram, has given him orders, and those orders will be fulfilled. Baghdad will bow, or Baghdad will burn. Behind Hulagu ride his generals, hardened men who have crossed deserts, who have watched cities crumble and empires collapse. Stibolka, the Nestorian Christian commander, watches with a hawk's sharpness, his loyalty to Hulagu unshaken. Alongside them are Chinese engineers, masters of siegecraft, who carry the knowledge of levers, counterweights, and stone that can break any wall. The host is not Mongol alone. It is a mosaic of peoples pressed into service. Turks, Persians, Georgians, Armenians, each drawn into the empire's gravity. Some ride willingly, others under command, but all are part of this living machine. Herds of sheep and goats trail the columns, food that walks with its masters. Wagons creak beneath the weight of supplies, siege parts and tents. Camels sway, burdened with timber and iron. At night, the army becomes a city. Fires spring up like stars upon the ground. Smoke twists into the cold sky. Men cook meat over embers, sharpen arrows, oil their bows. Some sing, low and steady, songs that sound like wind itself. Horses are watered, rubbed down, hobbled for the night. Discipline holds the camp in quiet order. Unlike Baghdad, there is no debate here, no fractured councils, only obedience. You walk among them, silent. You hear the clatter of pots, the murmurs of soldiers, the stamping of restless animals. The night is alive, but in a different way than the city. It is purposeful, united. At dawn, the march begins again. You ride with them. The horizon stretches. The land unrolls beneath hooves. The riders are tireless, hardened by years of movement. They can cover miles in a single day that would break ordinary armies. The discipline is remarkable. No shouting, no chaos, only the steady rhythm of command. Villages scatter before them. Some are abandoned, the people fleeing at the first rumor. Others resist briefly, only to fall quickly, their huts left smoking, their wells fouled. Rumors travel ahead of the riders, faster than the horses themselves. Merchants carry stories to Baghdad, stories of fortresses toppled, of towns emptied, of resistance met with merciless destruction. Whether every tale is true hardly matters. Fear itself is a weapon, and the Mongols wield it with skill. As the army advances, they gather timber from forests, stone from quarries. Engineers begin shaping the pieces of machines that will soon thunder against walls. Ropes are coiled, pulleys tested, wheels greased. Everything is prepared as they move. Where others would wait until reaching a siege, the Mongols prepare long before, ensuring that by the time they arrive, the assault can begin without pause. You feel the inevitability of it. The weight of this host is like gravity. Once set in motion, it does not stop. It cannot. The momentum carries them forward as surely as rivers carry water to the sea. Baghdad lies ahead, glittering, proud, unaware. But here on the plains, its fall is already written. The closer they draw, the more the rivers matter. The Tigris and Euphrates are not obstacles but opportunities, highways of water that can be used as much as land. Hulagu orders bridges built, boats seized, supplies ferried. Nothing is left to chance. Where a barrier stands, the engineers build a way across. Where resistance flickers, it is snuffed out. You drift closer to Hulagu himself. His gaze is steady, his silence unnerving. He does not boast, does not shout. His confidence is quieter, colder. He knows that Baghdad has refused his summons. He knows what must follow. In his mind, the city is already his. At night, he consults with his commanders. Maps are unrolled, rivers traced, distances measured. He asks questions, listens, decides. His calmness is a blade sharper than any sword. He does not rage. He simply moves forward. The soldiers respect him, fear him, follow him. His presence binds the host together. Around him, the steppe riders from Mongolia blend with Persian auxiliaries, with Turkic bowmen, with engineers from far China. Each piece fits, each role defined. Together they are not a horde of chaos, but a machine of conquest. A force that has already toppled kingdoms older than Baghdad. As the days pass, the city's silhouette begins to flicker in the distance, domes rising faintly, walls catching sunlight. The soldiers whisper of it, some curious, some eager, some indifferent. For them, one city is much like another, walls to break, treasures to seize, rulers to humble. But Baghdad's fame is great, and even the Mongols know this conquest will be remembered. You drift along the outskirts of the moving host, watching the land itself change. Fields are trampled, villages emptied, orchards stripped. The earth carries scars in the army's wake. Birds scatter, the very air feels heavier, laden with smoke and dust. At dawn one morning, the army halts upon a ridge. Below lies the plain stretching toward Baghdad, the Tigris glittering like a blade of silver. The city itself still distant, but its presence undeniable. Fires are lit, tents raised, engines assembled. This is no longer a march. This is a staging ground. You feel the shift. The host has arrived not at the gates, but at the threshold of destiny. Night falls, and the camp glows with firelight. Horses breathe steam into the cold air. Men sharpen blades, string bows, whisper prayers or curses. The engines of war stand ready, their wooden arms looming in the firelight, shadows stretching like giants across the ground. Baghdad lies ahead, its lanterns shimmering faintly upon the river. Within its walls, people still laugh, pray, bargain, argue. They do not yet see the full shape of what approaches. But here, upon the plain, the storm has gathered. The riders have come. The march is over. The siege is about to begin. You breathe the chill air, heavy with smoke and silence. You listen to the horses shift, to the wood of siege towers groaning, to the murmurs of men preparing for what comes next. And you know with the certainty of history itself that nothing now can turn them back. You stand once more within the palace walls, where torchlight wavers across marble and shadow. The summons has been answered. the envoys dismissed, and now the air itself is tense. A letter has gone eastward, polite but defiant, and the city's fate hangs like incense smoke that curls but does not disperse. The Caliph sits upon his throne, quiet, pensive. His eyes are lowered, his lips move softly in prayer, but the chamber around him hums with restless voices. Advisors gather in circles, robes sweeping across the tiled floor, voices sharp and low. Baghdad has spoken its refusal. Yet what will follow remains uncertain. It is here, in the palace council, that the city's destiny is debated, fractured, and though none of them will admit it, you drift among the figures, listening. One man, his beard streaked with gray, leans forward, eyes burning with conviction. We must fortify the walls, he urges, voice taut. Summon the soldiers, call the people to arms. We face not merchants or rebels, but an army that devours kingdoms. Delay is death. His words fall heavy, yet they are met with murmurs, not with action. Another younger, proud, wrapped in silks of deep green, shakes his head. And shall we empty the treasury? He scoffs. Shall we beg allies for aid, humiliating ourselves before lesser rulers? Baghdad is the city of the caliphs, the jewel of the world. Let them come if they dare. God will scatter them like dust. His tone is lofty, but beneath it lies fear disguised as arrogance. A third voice cuts in, softer, weary. God protects those who act, he says. Faith is not a shield against arrows. We must be wise. The Mongols offer submission. It is bitter, yes, but perhaps better to bow than to burn. His words hang in the chamber like forbidden smoke. Submission, the word itself seems poisonous. The Caliph lifts his gaze but says little. His face is calm, his brow furrowed, his hands folded neatly. He listens, and he hesitates. You step nearer, and you see the truth. This council is not one voice, but many, each pulling in a different direction. Some are driven by faith, others by pride, still others by self-preservation. The Caliph, caught between them, wavers like a lantern in the wind. The vizier leans close to him, whispering counsel meant to soothe. He assures the Caliph that Baghdad's walls are strong, that God's favor is steadfast, that there is no need to drain the treasury for armies that will not be needed. He flatters, he soothes, he delays. His motives are murky. Perhaps greed, perhaps fear of unrest, perhaps simple blindness. But his words dull the urgency. The generals stand apart, uneasy. They know the state of the soldiers, the weakness of their training, the lack of provisions. They press for reinforcements, for alliances, for swift action. But their voices are drowned in the swirl of pride and piety that fills the hall. You watch as arguments circle endlessly. Voices rise, fall, clash. No decision holds long before another voice unravels it. The Caliph nods, prays, delays. His faith is sincere, but faith without clarity becomes hesitation, and hesitation is fatal. Step outside the palace, and the divisions echo through the city. In the markets, some laugh at the Mongol threat, insisting that Baghdad has weathered worse. Others whisper in dread, hoarding grain, hiding valuables, preparing for the unthinkable. In mosques, sermons declare that God will defend his people, that no infidel army can breach the city of the caliphs. Yet in corners and alleys, quiet men mutter that perhaps God defends those who defend themselves. The city is not united. It is pulled between belief in its own permanence and fear of its fragility, between pride and prudence, between defiance and despair. You walk again through the council chamber, where debate rages into the night. A man slams his hand upon the table, declaring that to submit would dishonor the prophet's legacy. Another counters that the prophet himself valued the preservation of his people over empty pride. Back and forth they go, each drawing on memory, on scripture, on history, twisting them into weapons. The caliph's eyes grow weary. He leans back, his voice soft. God's will is greater than ours, he says. Let us trust in him. The words soothe some, anger others, but in the end they resolve nothing. Trust becomes another form of waiting. Days pass like this. Letters are sent to distant rulers, appeals for aid, for soldiers, for support. Some replies arrive, polite but hesitant, vague promises with little weight. Others send nothing at all. Baghdad stands largely alone, though within its walls many still believe they are untouchable. At night, the caliph prays long by candlelight. His whispers echo against marble, carrying upward like smoke. He is not faithless, not cruel. He believes deeply. But belief has become his refuge, his shield against decisions he cannot bring himself to make. He places his trust in God's protection, forgetting that faith without action is brittle. You drift through the palace gardens again, where courtiers gather in hushed circles. They gossip, they scheme, they reassure themselves with words they barely believe. Some secretly plan escape, quietly moving their families and wealth to safer ground. Others double down on denial, laughing too loudly at the idea of Mongol horsemen breaching Baghdad's gates. The people sense the disunity. In tea houses, rumors swirl that the caliph hoards gold while the soldiers go unpaid, that the viziers are corrupt, that the generals are ignored. Trust erodes, fear grows. Yet life continues, as though to stop would be to admit the truth. And you, moving silently through these halls, know what none of them can admit. You know that unity is their only chance, and unity has already slipped through their hands. The council is divided, and in its division, it has already sealed the city's fate. The Mongols do not debate. They do not delay. They move, they build, they break. And soon, their answer to Baghdad's hesitation will arrive, not in words, but in fire. For now, though, the city sleeps in uneasy peace. Lanterns flicker on the river. Courtiers murmur in shadowed halls. The caliph kneels in prayer. The divisions deepen quietly, like cracks in stone that widen slowly until, with a single strike, the whole wall collapses. You breathe in the night air of Baghdad, heavy with jasmine and unease. You feel the weight of decisions unmade, of voices that argue but never agree. And you know that when the storm comes, these arguments will scatter like dust in the wind. The council debates, the caliph prays, the people wait, and the horsemen ride closer. You walk with them now, as the last stretch of earth gives way to riverland. The ground softens beneath hooves, and the scent of water rises, the smell of reeds, of wet soil, of currents that have carried the memory of cities for centuries. And there, at last, Baghdad appears. It rises not as a ruin, not yet, but as a jewel upon the Tigris. The walls are broad and high, weathered by years yet still formidable. Domes gleam faintly in the pale light of morning. Minarets lift their slender arms into the sky, calling silently to heaven even before the muezzin's voice has risen. Bridges arch across the river like stone ribbons, binding the city's halves together. From a distance, Baghdad looks eternal. From a distance, its pride seems justified. You feel the weight of its centuries, the knowledge stored in its libraries, the prayers whispered in its mosques, the lives woven through its markets. For so long, it has been a center, a heart, a beacon. The Mongols themselves, gazing upon it, must have felt its gravity. And yet, the horsemen do not marvel. They do not pause to admire the architecture, the gardens, the wealth. They see walls and they see prey. To them, Baghdad is not a jewel, but a fortress. And every fortress can be broken. You drift closer, and you feel the difference in air on either side of the walls. Inside the city, life still clings to its rhythm. Markets open at dawn, stalls laden with figs and pomegranates, with wool and silk, with perfumes and parchment. Donkeys bray, The hammer of the blacksmith rings against iron. The call to prayer unfurls across the rooftops, voices rising together in devotion. From balconies, women shake out cloth. Children laugh as they chase each other through alleys. Baghdad breathes as it always has. But along the walls, soldiers pace. They are not so calm. From the battlements, they see the dust clouds rising. They see the endless line of men and horses and engines assembling upon the plain. They know what it means. Their voices are low, their eyes uncertain. Some whisper prayers beneath their breath. Others mutter curses. All of them feel the heaviness of inevitability. The walls themselves are broad, ancient, built to withstand assaults. Gates reinforced with iron. Towers placed at intervals. From atop them, one can look out and see the enemy spread like a dark sea. The walls have held before. They have seen threats before, but never a host such as this. You walk along the parapets, feeling the stone beneath your hand. The masonry is strong, but old. In places, cracks run thin, as hairlines. In others, repairs are rough, hurried, patched. The defenders know where the weaknesses lie. They hope the Mongols do not. At night, the city glows with lanterns reflected in the river. Boats drift lazily, fishermen casting nets, their voices carrying across the water. Yet even these ordinary acts feel fragile now, as though they are gestures of defiance against a truth everyone senses. Mothers hush their children, urging them not to stare at the flames burning in the enemy camp. Merchants whisper of hiding goods. Priests and scholars lead prayers in crowded mosques, their words both fervent and fearful. You drift back outside among the Mongols. Their camp spreads wide, disciplined, orderly. Fires dot the earth like constellations fall into ground. Engineers hammer timbers together, the skeletons of siege towers taking shape. Ropes are tested, stones gathered, cauldrons prepared. Every sound is purposeful. Where Baghdad is divided in fear, the Mongols are united in action. Hulagu walks among his men, silent, composed. He does not shout. He does not need to. His presence alone is enough to steady them, to remind them of their task. He glances toward the walls, measuring them with his eyes, already planning where to strike, where to break. Inside the city, the council meets again. The Caliph sits, pale and weary, listening as advisors argue. Some demand an immediate counterattack, a sortie to scatter the Mongols before their engines are ready. Others warn against leaving the safety of the walls. Some urge renewed negotiations, offering gold, tribute, anything to delay. Others insist that to negotiate now would be to admit weakness, to betray faith. The Caliph hesitates, prays, delays. Soldiers wait without orders. Citizens wait without answers. The walls stand tall, but within them, uncertainty gnaws. Meanwhile, outside, the Mongols waste no time. They drive stakes into the earth, laying out the lines of encirclement. They dam small channels, diverting water to their advantage. They position their cavalry to intercept any who might try to flee. They build, they plan, they prepare. Their movements are efficient, methodical, relentless. From the battlements, defenders watch with dread. They see the towers grow taller each day, the mangonels and trebuchets assembled piece by piece, the camps expanding, the lines tightening. Some still believe the walls will hold, that the city's size and glory will shield it. Others whisper that the end has already begun. Night after night, the tension thickens. Families huddle in their homes, listening for sounds beyond the walls. Merchants close their stalls earlier. Soldiers keep to their posts, their eyes fixed outward. The air itself feels heavy, charged, as though waiting for the first strike. You linger by the river, where the Tigris flows quietly past, reflecting moonlight and lantern flame. The water has seen centuries, has carried barges of scholars, soldiers, merchants, pilgrims. Tonight it flows calmly still. But soon it will bear witness to fire, to ruin, to ink and ash. For now, though, it whispers softly against the banks, as if trying to soothe the city, as if rivers could reassure walls. You walk once more along the battlements. The soldiers' faces are shadowed, their silhouettes sharp against the sky. In the distance, the Mongol camp glows steadily, patient as the stars. The defenders shift uneasily. They know what waits. And you know too. You feel the inevitability pressing down, the collision of pride and power, of stone and siege. The walls of Baghdad still stand, but standing is not the same as surviving. You breathe with the city one last time, listening to its murmurs, its prayers, its fragile rhythm, and you hear, carried on the wind from the plain, the sound of hammers on wood, ropes pulled taut, stones piled high. The engines of war are waking. You stand at the edge of dawn. The sky is pale, the light weak, and both city and plain lie caught between shadow and day. The walls of Baghdad loom high, their stones still strong in the early haze. Yet beyond them, on the open earth, something greater rises. The Mongols are building. It begins with the sound of wood. The crack of axes in nearby groves, the groan of timber dragged across the earth by oxen and camels, the rasp of saws, the rhythm of hammers. The plain around Baghdad becomes a workshop, a place where war is crafted piece by piece. You watch as engineers from the east direct the labor. They wear thick robes, their hands calloused, their voices steady. They measure with cords, mark with charcoal, command with calm precision. Around them, soldiers carry beams, rope, iron, the air fills with dust, and the sharp scent of sap bleeding from cut logs. Slowly, the shapes emerge. Siege towers rise like skeletons of giants, their frames climbing higher each day, tier upon tier of timber bound with iron. Trebuchets take form, their long arms balanced on pivots, counterweights heavy with stone, mangonels crouch like waiting beasts, cords tightened, ready to hurl death. From the walls of Baghdad, the defenders watch in dread. They see not only soldiers now, but machines, engines of earth and timber, born to tear down what centuries built. The sight gnaws at their courage. Some whisper prayers, others curse, but none can look away. The Mongols waste nothing. Every tree near the city is cut, every plank shaped, every rope stretched. Blacksmiths hammer nails and bolts, sparks flying into the dust. Fires burn constantly to heat and bend iron. Carpenters shout to one another, their movements swift and practiced. This is not the chaos of improvisation. It is the cold craft of experience, honed over years of conquest. At night, the camp does not rest. Torches flare, illuminating half-finished towers. Men work in shifts, hammering through the darkness, their silhouettes stark against firelight. Horses stamp in the shadows, restless. The city can hear it all, the groan of timbers, the clatter of iron, the murmur of voices. It is a lullaby of fear, sung just beyond the walls. Inside Baghdad, panic flickers. The Caliph prays more fervently. His council argues with greater heat. Some cry for a sally, to burn the machines before they are finished. Others warn it would be suicide, that leaving the walls would mean destruction. Still others cling to the hope that God will intervene, that the storm will pass, that miracles will rise where soldiers cannot. But no miracle halts the hammers. Day by day, the engines grow. The towers now stand as tall as the walls they are meant to breach, their sides covered in hides soaked in vinegar and brine, meant to resist fire. The trebuchets stand in lines, their arms taut, stones piled at their bases. Bowmen climb the towers, testing vantage points, loosing arrows to measure range. The defenders reply with shafts of their own, arrows whistling across the plain, but the machines are too far, too protected. The Tigris bears witness. Its waters reflect both city and camp, shimmering with uneasy symmetry. On one bank, Domes and minarets rise above crowded streets. On the other, towers of wood rise above ordered rows of tents. The river seems to divide not just land, but worlds. The world of learning and tradition, and the world of conquest and inevitability. One morning, the trebuchets are tested. With a crack like thunder, a stone arcs across the sky. It lands short, shattering on the ground outside the walls. The sound alone makes hearts tremble. A second stone follows, closer, then another, closer still. Each one strikes with greater precision, each one a promise of what is to come. The defenders return fire. Archers line the battlements, loosing volleys into the camp. Some arrows strike, felling men, scattering horses. Cheers rise briefly from the walls. But for every man lost, 10 more remain. For every arrow loosed, a stone is answered. The imbalance is plain. The Mongols continue, unshaken. Their discipline holds. The towers advance, rolled on massive wheels across planks laid on the earth. The ground trembles with their movement. Defenders hurl firepots, pitch, stones, but the hides hold. Arrows rain down from the towers in reply, striking men upon the walls. You drift closer, hearing the cries of the wounded, the clash of iron on stone, the hiss of firepots bursting into flame. Smoke drifts upward, mingling with dust. The air grows thick, acrid, heavy. The sun itself seems dimmed by it. And still the machines advance. At night, Baghdad's people huddle in their homes, listening to the sounds of war being built. Mothers hush children who ask why the earth shakes. Merchants clutch their chests, thinking of gold hidden under floors. Scholars gather in mosques, reciting prayers, debating whether this is God's wrath or merely man's cruelty. The city breathes in fear, exhales in hope, and waits. The Caliph calls for more prayers, more sermons, more proclamations of faith. Yet the soldiers mutter that proclamations cannot mend broken walls. The generals press for plans, but the council offers only arguments. Decisions unravel. The city's defenses rely less on strategy than on stone and faith. The Mongols, meanwhile, refine their work. Engineers walk among the machines, checking pulleys, tightening ropes, adjusting angles. Each detail is tended, each weapon prepared. When the time comes, they will not falter. You walk among the siege engines at dusk. Their silhouettes tower against the fading light, monstrous shapes that seem almost alive. The air is thick with the scent of wood and sweat, of pitch and smoke. Men move like shadows between them, silent, efficient. From the walls, you hear drums, horns, cries meant to bolster courage. But the sound is thin, strained. The defenders try to mask their fear with noise, but fear lingers all the same. And as you watch the towers inch forward and the trebuchets take aim, that noise will not stop them. The machines are ready. The city is not. The stage is set, the players waiting. The plain is filled with the groan of wood, the murmur of soldiers, the whisper of the river. The walls of Baghdad stand firm, but firmness is not eternity. You breathe in the heavy air. You hear the taut silence between strikes. You feel the inevitability pressing closer with every hammer, every rope, every wheel. The engines of earth and timber are awake, and soon they will speak. You drift now to the river's edge, where the Tigris flows broad and steady, silver under the changing light. It has seen so many things: merchants' barges gliding with silks and spices, fishermen casting nets, scholars drifting across its waters with scrolls tucked beneath their arms. It has carried laughter, trade, and prayer. But now the river becomes something else. It becomes a witness. It becomes a battlefield. The Mongols understand water. They do not see rivers as obstacles, but as tools, as highways, as weapons. Already their engineers are at work along the banks. Bridges of rope and timber stretch across the current, anchored with stones and stakes. Boats seized from nearby villages are dragged into service, lashed together to form rafts. The calm Tigris begins to fill with structures alien to its flow. From the walls of Baghdad, the defenders watch uneasily. The river has always been their ally, a moat and a lifeline, separating them from would-be invaders. To see it cross so easily feels like betrayal, as though even the Tigris has turned against them. Archers line the battlements, loosing arrows at men laboring by the banks. Some shafts find their mark, dropping Mongols into the water, but others push forward undeterred, their work steady, their purpose unbroken. One morning, the defenders make a bold attempt. A flotilla of small boats pushes out from the city, their hulls laden with archers and firepots. They skim across the current, arrows arcing upward, flames licking at the sky. For a moment, hope stirs on the walls as the boats near the Mongol works. The air is alive with cries, with the whistle of arrows, with the hiss of fire. But the Mongols are ready. Their horse archers, dismounted yet no less deadly, loose volleys from the banks. Arrows rain upon the boats, striking men down, piercing sails, tearing through wood. Some boats burst into flame, fire spreading faster than oars can quench. Others capsize under the chaos, men spilling into the current, dragged down by armor. The Tigris swallows them quickly, carrying them away with barely a ripple. From the walls, families watch in horror. Mothers clutch children tighter, fathers murmur prayers, their eyes wet. The river that once nourished them now devours their kin. The Mongols do not waste the moment. They send their own rafts forward, laden with archers who fire relentlessly at the walls. Stones from trebuchets thunder overhead, splashing into the river, smashing into the gates, sending shockwaves through the water. The defenders' attempts grow weaker, their losses mounting. By dusk, the river is thick with debris. Broken boats, shattered timbers, corpses drifting silently downstream. The water darkens, stained with ash and blood. The Tigris, once mirror of domes and gardens, now reflects only fire and ruin. Yet the river resists in its own way. It floods unexpectedly, swollen by rains upriver, washing away some of the Mongols' works. Rafts are torn loose, boats scattered, bridges strained against the current. For a moment, nature itself seems to side with Baghdad. The defenders cheer from the walls, seeing Mongol rafts spin helplessly, men dragged under by the surge. Hope flickers, fragile but bright. But the Mongols adapt. They anchor their works deeper, reinforce bridges with stone, lash rafts tighter. Where water swallows, they rebuild. Where current resists, they bend it to their use. No setback halts them for long. You linger at the riverbanks where the noise is constant. The creak of wood, the splash of oars, the hiss of arrows cutting air. Horses snort as they are led onto ferries. Men shout in tongues mingled together, Mongolian, Turkic, Persian, Chinese, yet all share the same rhythm, the same discipline. Across the water, Baghdad's cries rise in counterpoint, horns sounding, drums pounding, voices shouting defiance. The Tigris lies between them, no longer a simple river, but a stage upon which fear and hope collide. At night, the water glows with firelight. Torches reflect in wavering patterns, broken by ripples, scattered by current. The air smells of smoke, of pitch, of wet wood. Fish leap briefly, then vanish again, as if even they seek to escape the turmoil. Within the city, people whisper that the river will save them. They speak of how it has always protected Baghdad, how God would not let his city be crossed. They cling to the idea of water as barrier, as shield. But their whispers weaken with each day, each new raft, each new bridge. The sight of Mongol works rising steadily upon the far bank gnaws at their faith. Hulagu himself rides to the river one afternoon, his horse stamping at the bank. He surveys the scene with calm eyes, noting where bridges strain, where rafts falter, where fire has blackened wood. He says little, but his gaze is enough. His men redouble their work, their hands moving faster, their voices sharper. From the walls, the defenders see him. distant but unmistakable. The grandson of Genghis, commander of the storm, watching their city with the gaze of a hunter. Fear spreads like a shadow among them. The days stretch on. More stones are across the sky, crashing into water, into walls, into homes. More boats are lost, more men drowned. The river grows heavier, slower, as if burdened by what it carries. Some say it runs red. Others whisper that it runs black, as though ink itself has begun to seep into its veins, foreshadowing what is yet to come. And you stand there between walls and plain, listening to the Tigris breathe. Its current is steady, eternal, indifferent. It has carried life and now it carries death. It does not choose. It only flows. Night deepens once more. The stars shimmer faintly above, mirrored in water broken by drifting wreckage. From the Mongol camp comes the sound of hammers. From the city comes the sound of prayer. Between them lies the river, wide, silver, silent. You realize then that the Tigris has become more than water. It is memory. It is witness. It is the line that both joins and divides. It has been a highway of learning, of commerce, of beauty. Now it becomes a theater of war. And when this war ends, it will carry the weight of its memory far downstream, into the veins of the earth, into the centuries to come. You breathe, you listen, you wait. The river flows on. And soon it will carry more than boats, more than men, more than stone. It will carry the very weight of Baghdad's soul. You move now through the narrowing world of Baghdad. The walls still stand. The domes still rise. The river still flows, but the circle has closed. The Mongol host spreads wide around the city, a ring of fire and steel that tightens with every day. From the towers, soldiers look outward and see no horizon, no escape. To the north, cavalry patrols ride in endless arcs, dust clouds drifting like pale banners. To the south, siege engines wait, their arms still, their stones piled high. To the east and west, camps stretch beyond sight, rows of tents, lines of horses, fires that glow red against the night. Baghdad is surrounded, not just in body, but in spirit. You walk the streets and you feel the change. The markets are quieter now. Stalls once overflowing with fruit and spice stand half empty, their baskets of figs and dates replaced by meager piles. Merchants clutch their goods close, wary of rising prices, wary of desperate hands. Gold loses meaning when bread itself grows rare. The people whisper of the encirclement. Some speak bravely, insisting the city cannot fall, that its walls will hold, that God will intervene. Others mutter of famine, of thirst, of the fate of cities that resisted before. Rumors spread faster than truth, of Mongols boiling prisoners alive, of rivers running red, of libraries already burned in distant lands. Each rumor tightens the knot in the stomachs of the people. By night, the city listens. Outside the walls, the Mongols hammer and saw, their engines creaking in the darkness. Horses snort, fires crackle, the sounds drift inward, carried on the wind. The people lie awake in their homes, hearing the enemy breathe, feeling their presence like a weight pressing down upon the city. The Caliph calls for prayer, for fasting, for patience. He orders sermons preached in the mosques, urging faith, urging unity. But even in prayer, unease seeps through. Faith does not quiet empty stomachs. Faith does not mend the cracks in the walls or sharpen dull swords. Faith comforts, but it does not feed. You pass by a bakery where loaves once lined the shelves, warm and fragrant. Now the ovens are cool, the flour rationed, the bread scarce. People wait in lines, clutching coins, begging for scraps. Mothers hush their children, pressing them close, murmuring promises they cannot keep. Hunger sharpens tempers. Fights break out. Guards are called to keep order. In courtyards, wells are lowered deeper. Buckets scrape against stone, seeking water that grows harder to find. The river still flows, but crossing to it is perilous. Arrows raining from the Mongol lines. The lifeblood of the city lies within sight, yet beyond reach. A cruel reminder of what once was easy. In the house of wisdom, scholars still gather, still argue, still hope. They debate whether knowledge itself might save them, whether wisdom can hold against arrows. Some propose negotiations, others condemn the thought as betrayal. Their voices echo through halls lined with books, their words fragile against the weight of siege. The soldiers on the walls grow weary. They pace their towers, bows in hand, spears at the ready. Their armor is dented, their faces drawn. Supplies of arrows dwindle. Repairs to walls are slow. Yet they remain, because to leave the walls is to leave the city itself. They are the first and last line, and they know it. From above, Baghdad seems like a great heart, beating in a tightening chest. Its streets are arteries, still alive with movement, but slower now, weaker. Its walls are ribs, holding firm but strained. Around it presses the Mongol host, unyielding, suffocating. The encirclement is not only physical, it is psychological. The people feel it in their bones, in the way shadows lengthen, in the way voices drop to whispers. Children no longer play in the streets. Merchants no longer boast, even the birds seem fewer, their wings carrying them away from the coming storm. Hulagu waits. He does not rush. He knows the circle itself is a weapon. He knows time wears cities down as surely as stones and fire. He lets fear work where arrows cannot. His men are fed, supplied by the vast lands already under Mongol control. The people of Baghdad, by contrast, consume their stores faster than they can replace them. The balance tilts with each passing day. Inside the palace, the council grows more frantic. The caliph prays, his voice hoarse, his eyes weary. Advisors argue louder, their words tinged with desperation. Some still cling to pride, insisting surrender is unthinkable. Others whisper that surrender is the only way to survive. The arguments circle endlessly, like the Mongol army itself, enclosing without resolution. You walk through the city at dusk. Lanterns flicker weakly. Fewer now, as oil grows scarce. The streets are quieter, footsteps softer. The smell of cooking lingers less, replaced by the sharp scent of hunger. From open windows, you hear murmured prayers, soft weeping, the cough of sickness. The city is not broken yet, but it is bending. At the riverbank, you watch as defenders launch one last attempt. A handful of boats slip into the current under moonlight, their oars muffled, their passengers tense. They hope to break through, to reach allies, to bring help. But the Mongols are waiting. Arrows hiss across the water, striking men down. The boats capsize, the current drags bodies away. By dawn, no survivors return. The message is clear. Baghdad is alone. The encirclement tightens, supplies dwindle, fear spreads, hope flickers like a candle in the wind. And you, standing among them, feel the weight of inevitability pressing down. You see it in the eyes of the hungry, in the silence of the streets, in the stillness of the river. The city that once believed itself eternal is now caught in a grip it cannot break. The circle has closed, and within it, Baghdad begins to starve. The night has thinned, and the first color of dawn seeps into the sky. The city is hushed, as though holding its breath. Even the call to prayer seems muted, heavy, strained. On the walls, defenders stand with weary eyes, their bows strung, their spears upright. Beneath them, in the streets, people huddle in silence, waiting for a sound they dread but know must come. Then it comes. The crash of wood and stone, sudden, violent, shaking the earth itself. A trebuchet looses its first stone of the morning, and the air is torn with its passing. It slams into the wall with a sound like thunder, shattering stone, sending shards flying. Dust billows upward, choking the air. Before it settles, Another stone arcs overhead, then another. Each strike a hammer upon the heart of the city. You stand upon the parapet, feeling the stone tremble beneath your feet. Defenders shout, some loosing arrows, others raising shields, but their arrows cannot stop the great arms of wood that hurl death from the plain. The Mongols' machines work in steady rhythm, each one releasing, resetting, releasing again, relentless as the heartbeat of a giant. Soon the walls are marked with wounds, cracks spidering through their surfaces, gaps torn wider with every strike. Dust clings to beards and armor. Men cough, eyes red, ears ringing with the echo of impact. They try to patch what they can, dragging stones, mortar, timber, but each repair is broken before it sets. By midday, the first breach yawns open. A section of wall collapses with a roar, stones tumbling inward, crushing men beneath their own defenses. Cries rise, sharp and desperate. The defenders rush to fill the gap, shields and spears raised, but the dust blinds them. The stones wound them. The very earth betrays them. The Mongols see it. From their lines, horns sound, low and terrible. Cavalry shift, archers mount, siege towers creak forward. The army stirs like a beast, scenting blood. The breach is not wide enough yet for the flood, but it is a beginning. The defenders fight to hold it. They stack carts, drag timbers, pile rubble into a makeshift wall. Archers line the gap, loosing shafts into the plain. The Mongols answer with volleys of their own, arrows falling like rain, striking down men before they can lift their bows. The breach becomes a place of death, choked with dust, blood, and bodies. But the machines do not stop. Stone after stone slams into the walls, widening the wounds, shaking the towers, sending cracks through gates. One by one, more breaches open, north, south, east. The defenders run from one to another, trying to patch, to hold, to resist. But they are too few, too weary, too overwhelmed. You move through the streets as panic spreads. People flee from the edges, clutching children, carrying bundles of food, of books, of precious things they cannot bear to lose. Some rush toward the mosques, believing sanctuary will save them. Others hide in cellars, trembling in the dark. The city is no longer simply under siege. It is breaking from within. In the palace, the Caliph hears the thunder and feels the stone tremble. He prays. His voice steady, but his face pale. His advisors argue still, some urging surrender, others insisting it is too late. The Caliph's hands tremble as he lifts them in supplication. His faith is strong, but his power is gone. The city shudders around him, and his words vanish into dust. On the walls, the soldiers fight bravely, desperately. They hurl fire pots onto the siege towers, but the hides protect them. They drop stones into the breaches, but the Mongols return stones 100-fold. They shout, they pray, they bleed. Some stand until arrows pierce them, until stones crush them, until fire swallows them. Their courage is fierce, but courage cannot mend broken walls. By afternoon, the breaches widen. One gate, struck again and again, splinters inward. Iron bends, wood cracks, bolts tear free. With a final roar, the gate collapses, opening a wound at the city's heart. The Mongols surge. Archers pour arrows into the gap, clearing defenders from the ruins. Then cavalry thunder forward, hooves striking broken stone, riders leaning low, blades ready. Their cries rise like a storm, echoing through the breach, carrying death into the streets. The defenders meet them, shields raised, spears braced. For a moment, the clash is terrible. Steel strikes steel, men shout, horses scream. But the tide is too strong, the gap too wide. The Mongols push through, relentless, cutting down those who stand, trampling those who fall. The city is breached. From other sides, towers grind against the walls, bridges drop, ladders rise. Mongol soldiers climb swiftly, Arrows loosed downward as they ascend. Defenders hurl stones, thrust spears, set ladders aflame. But too many rise, too many climb. Soon the walls themselves are taken, defenders pushed back, towers claimed, banners torn down. You drift through the streets as the flood spreads. Mongols pour inward, methodical, unstoppable. Arrows strike from rooftops, stones from windows, but the reply is swift and merciless. Families flee through alleys. Soldiers fall back to squares and courtyards, making last stands that crumble quickly. The sound is overwhelming. Hooves striking stone, arrows whistling, wood splintering, men shouting, women screaming, children crying. The city that once sang with markets and prayer now roars with chaos. Smoke begins to rise, thin at first, then thicker, spreading from homes alight, from oil jars broken and burning. And still, the Mongols press on. The defenders fight bravely, but the breaches widen, the walls collapse, the gates fall. Everywhere, the tide spreads. By evening, the Mongols hold the walls, the gates, the breaches. The defenders are pushed inward, retreating street by street. The city that once stood eternal is pierced, its heart laid bare. The day ends in smoke and blood. The sun sets red, casting long shadows through the ruins of walls. Fires burn where homes once stood. The Tigris reflects not lanterns now, but flames. You stand in the broken gate, looking inward. The city is no longer whole. It is breached, wounded, falling. The people who believed themselves eternal now run, hide, pray, despair. And you know that this is only the beginning. The walls are broken. The horsemen are inside. Baghdad has been opened. You drift now through the smoke-choked streets, where the clatter of hooves and the crash of steel echo between walls that once carried only the sound of scholars' voices and merchants' songs. The Mongols have poured through the breaches, and the city's heart trembles under their weight. Yet among all the treasures of Baghdad, the markets, the palaces, the gardens, one place rises in memory above the rest. The libraries, the house of wisdom. You walk its halls in the fading light, long before fire touches them, long before ink bleeds into the river. The shelves stretch high, lined with manuscripts gathered across centuries, from Greece, from India, from Persia, from China. Scrolls of parchment and codices of leather, the thoughts of countless minds, preserved in careful script. Here, translators once sat at long tables, comparing lines of Aristotle with commentaries of Avicenna, debating the nature of stars, the logic of law, the balance of medicine. The air still carries the faint musk of ink, the dry sweetness of old paper, the wax of candles long burned. You hear echoes of voices past, scholars arguing gently, pens scratching, students whispering their questions. The House of Wisdom was not merely a building. It was a beacon, a gathering of centuries, a treasury of the world's memory. Its light spread far beyond Baghdad, illuminating lands that never saw its walls. But now, those walls shake. You hear the distant crash of siege stones, the roar of fire, the cries of battle. Dust sifts down from the rafters as the ground trembles. The voices of scholars are silent. Their benches are empty. Their works stand vulnerable, waiting. Some try to save them. You see figures moving quickly through the corridors. Scribes gathering armfuls of scrolls, scholars lifting heavy volumes, servants carrying what they can. Their hands shake. Their eyes dart. They know what approaches. They know what is at stake. They whisper prayers over each manuscript, as though words alone might shield ink from flame. But how much can be saved when the flood pours inward? The Mongols are not here for books. They are here for conquest, for obedience, for destruction of defiance. A library is only timber and parchment to them, no different than a stable or a storehouse. Knowledge does not halt arrows. Words do not stop hooves. You imagine the moment soldiers burst through the doors, their boots heavy upon marble floors, their blades glinting, their eyes searching not for wisdom but for wealth. Shelves are overturned, scrolls scattered, bindings torn. Parchment falls like leaves, brittle, helpless. Some soldiers glance curiously at the piles, at the strange letters inked across them. But curiosity is brief. Fire is swifter. The House of Wisdom is not alone. Throughout Baghdad, smaller libraries, private collections, scholars' homes, all hold volumes gathered across generations. Families hide books beneath floorboards, in chests, behind walls as though paper could be smuggled to safety like jewels. But paper is fragile. Fire finds it quickly. From the riverbank, you watch as Mongol soldiers drag piles of books to the water. Some are burned, their ashes drifting upward like dark snow. Others are thrown directly into the Tigris, the current swallowing them, the ink bleeding into waves. The river, once silver, grows darker, stained with knowledge dissolving into oblivion. People watching from the banks weep openly, their hands lifted, their voices breaking. It is not only lives that are lost, it is memory itself. And yet, some fragments survive. A scholar clutches a single manuscript beneath his cloak, fleeing into the chaos. A child carries a page torn from a book, its words clutched like a charm. A scribe recites aloud from a text as it burns, hoping memory will hold what fire consumes. These are small resistances, fragile but real. The silence of the libraries is heavy. You walk through the ruined halls after soldiers pass, parchment scattered, shelves broken. The scent of smoke mingles with the must of old ink, acrid and bitter. You pick up a page, its edges charred, its words still legible for now. It speaks of stars, of the movements of planets, of patterns written across the heavens. You read it softly, as though to preserve its voice, but already the letters smudge beneath your touch, fading. It is said that when the House of Wisdom fell, centuries of knowledge vanished. Works of philosophy, medicine, astronomy, mathematics, law texts that had survived through translation and copying, gathered from Greece, India, Persia, gone in a single sweep. Some say the river ran black with ink, the waters so thick that they looked like midnight flowing through the city. Whether truth or legend, the image lingers. Knowledge dissolved into water, as though history itself wept. You think of the hands that wrote those words, the eyes that studied them, the voices that debated them, whole lives poured into ink, into script, into pages now drifting downriver, unread. The silence left behind is immense, a silence not just of voices, but of possibility. Ideas that might have shaped futures, gone. Questions that might have been answered, left unasked. The library's destruction is not only an end, but a wound carried forward through time. Yet within the silence, there is also memory. The image of scholars leaning over scrolls, of translators weaving one language into another, of students straining to understand, these remain. The destruction is terrible, but the existence of such a place, even for a time, is also a legacy. You linger in the quiet, among torn pages and smoldering wood. Outside, the city still roars with battle, with fire, with cries. But here, the silence is louder. The silence of the libraries is a grief deeper than blood, because it is the loss of what might have been, the extinguishing of light before its time. You close your eyes, you listen, you remember, and the silence itself becomes a kind of morning chant, a requiem for words drowned in water and smoke. You move now toward the heart of the palace, where the last flickers of power cling like embers in ash. The city outside is breaking. Fires burn in the markets, the libraries are silenced. The streets echo with the thunder of hooves. Families cower in shadowed corners, soldiers fall in alleyways, prayers rise with desperation. Yet here, behind walls still gilded with mosaics and gardens where fountains trickle faintly, the Caliph al-Mustasim remains. He is the shadow of an old lineage, the 37th Abbasid to bear the mantle of the Prophet's family. His robe is heavy with silk, his turban bound with dignity, his hands pale, uncalloused. Once, his ancestors commanded armies across deserts and seas. Once, the Abbasids were the axis around which the world spun, but centuries have thinned their power, and now the Caliph sits not as a ruler, but as a symbol. The Mongols know this. Hulagu has no need for Baghdad's palaces, no reverence for its domes. But the Caliph, he is the city's soul. To capture him is to capture Baghdad itself. You walk the palace corridors as the storm draws near. Courtiers rush in panic, their silks stained with ash, their voices sharp with fear. Some beg the Caliph to flee, urging him to escape by hidden passage, to seek safety beyond the city. Others warn that flight would be dishonor, that he must remain to face destiny. The Caliph listens, his face pale, his eyes lowered. He prays softly as though the murmurs of men matter less than the will of God. The gates of the palace tremble as Mongol soldiers press inward. Their boots strike marble. Their voices echo against carved ceilings. Gardens that once bloomed with jasmine and orange are trampled beneath hooves. Fountains, once reflecting moonlight, now shimmer with blood. The palace of peace becomes a fortress of fear. The Caliph is taken. You see him led from his chamber, his robe gathered in trembling hands. He does not resist, nor cry out. His face is calm, almost resigned, as though he knew this moment would come. Around him, his family weeps, his courtiers plead, but the Mongols pay no heed. Chains are clasped upon wrists that once lifted in prayer before thousands. The voice of Baghdad's faith is silenced beneath iron. The capture is not violent in itself. No blade strikes him, no arrow pierces, yet the weight of it is immense. In this moment, centuries collapse. The Abbasid Caliphate, which once ruled from Spain to India, which fostered knowledge, trade, poetry, law, now ends in quiet footsteps as its last caliph is led away. Hulagu receives him in the Mongol camp. The Khan sits in his tent, surrounded by generals, his presence commanding, his silence more terrible than shouts. The Caliph is brought before him, bowed low, trembling. Hulagu's gaze is steady, cold. He does not rage. He does not gloat. He simply looks at the man who embodied an empire, and he sees not power, but weakness. Some accounts say Hulagu mocks him, asks why the God he trusted has not saved him. Others say the Khan remains silent, letting the weight of defeat speak for itself. The details shift in memory, but the essence is the same. The Caliph, who once was untouchable, stands small before a conqueror who does not fear him. You imagine the thoughts in al-Mustasim's heart. Did he feel betrayed by allies who never came, by advisors who whispered false counsel, by his own hesitation, his own faith, that God would spare what man would not defend? Did he still believe, even then, that Baghdad was eternal, that somehow this was a test and not an end? The Mongols debate his fate. To shed caliphal blood outright might risk angering the faithful across Islam. To leave him alive is dangerous, a symbol for rebellion. The solution is cruel, symbolic, careful. He is executed, though not by blade. One account says he is rolled into a carpet and trampled by horses so that no royal blood touches earth. Another whispers of slow suffocation, hidden from sight. Whatever the method, the result is certain. The last Abbasid Caliph of Baghdad is gone. The court is scattered. His sons are killed, his daughters taken captive, his advisors silenced. The palace falls into ruin, its mosaics shattered, its fountains broken, its gardens burned. The Abbasid line, which began in triumph and shone for centuries, ends in a single act of erasure. You walk the empty halls afterward. The air is still, heavy with smoke. Candles sputter, their flames weak. The scent of rosewater lingers faintly, mingled with ash. The throne stands empty, its cushions askew, its silks torn. It feels not only empty, but abandoned, as though even memory itself recoils. The city knows. Word spreads quickly, whispers in alleys, cries in courtyards, prayers broken by sobs. The Caliph is gone. The Abbasids are ended. The people weep, but their tears are not only for him. They weep for themselves, for the centuries that collapse into silence, for the belief that Baghdad was eternal. That belief dies with him. Outside, Hulagu's camp is calm. Fires burn steadily. Soldiers eat. Horses rest. The Mongols treat the fall of Caliph and city as another conquest, another victory. To them, it is no different than Nishapur or Merv. But history feels the weight. The world feels the shift. For centuries, the Abbasid Caliphate was a symbol of unity for the Muslim world, even when its power waned. With its fall, that symbol shatters. The center is gone. The heart is stilled. You stand in the ruins of the palace and listen. The silence is immense. It is not only the silence of absence, but the silence of something vast ending, of a world turned. You feel it in your chest, heavy, aching. The Caliph is gone. The Abbasids are no more. And Baghdad, heart of the world, lies broken. You drift again toward the river, where the Tigris flows wide and steady. The same river that has carried merchants and pilgrims for centuries. The same river that has mirrored domes and minarets in its silver skin. But now it carries something else. It carries the ruin of a city's soul. The conquest has moved beyond gates and walls. The Mongols hold the city. The Caliph is gone. The court destroyed. The defenses shattered. What remains is not battle, but aftermath. Baghdad's treasures lie vulnerable. Its markets, its gardens, its palaces, and above all, its libraries. The House of Wisdom has already been struck. Its shelves torn, its books scattered. Now the destruction spreads outward. Soldiers move from library to library, from scholar's house to mosque, gathering manuscripts, scrolls, codices. They do not come for learning. They come for fuel, for weight, for water's hunger. You watch as piles of books grow upon the banks. Manuscripts of Aristotle translated into Arabic, commentaries of Avicenna and Averroes, astronomical charts drawn by hands that measured stars centuries before. Medical treatises, legal codices, works of poetry, volumes of philosophy. They lie together now in heaps. The words of centuries pressed against one another like refugees. One soldier lifts a book, frowns at its strange script, then tosses it into the current. Another kicks a pile forward, pages fluttering like broken wings before sinking. Soon the banks are alive with movement. Men dragging wagon loads of texts, hurling them into the river. At first, the water swallows them silently. Scrolls vanish beneath the surface. Codices sink quickly, their leather covers darkening. But soon the ink begins to bleed. Black threads unravel into the current, curling, spreading. The Tigris grows clouded, darker, as though the river itself drinks knowledge and cannot hold it. People watch from a distance, powerless. Some weep openly, their cries sharp and raw. Scholars clutch their heads, unable to watch, unable to look away. Families kneel, their prayers breaking into sobs. They know this is not only a conquest of land, but a conquest of memory. What was written to outlive death is itself dying. You kneel at the bank and lift a single page, sodden, torn. The ink runs across your hand, staining your fingers. The words are blurred, unreadable, yet you feel the weight of what they once said. Perhaps a poem, perhaps a law, perhaps a discovery. It is gone now, except for the ghost of its letters upon your palm. The river runs darker with each hour. Witnesses later say it ran black, so heavy with ink that its surface seemed like midnight flowing through the heart of the world. Some accounts say the books were so many that they formed a bridge, scholars walking across their ruined pages as if upon solid ground. Whether memory exaggerates or not, the truth is the same. The river became a grave for knowledge. But not all was lost to water. Fires, too, claimed their share. Piles of manuscripts were set alight, their pages curling, blackening, breaking apart into ash. The air filled with the bitter scent of burned parchment, a smoke unlike any other, carrying with it the weight of thought and memory. Ash drifted through the streets, soft flakes falling upon domes, upon gardens, upon the shoulders of those who mourned. People brushed it away from their robes, from their hair, from their children's faces, not realizing that they brushed away centuries. You walk through the ruins of the House of Wisdom after the flames. Its shelves are collapsed, its tables overturned, its walls scorched. The silence inside is heavy, suffocating. You pick up a fragment of a burned page, only a single word legible, the rest gone to smoke. That word is all that remains of what may have been volumes. You hold it as though it were treasure, but you know it is only a shard of something vast. The destruction is not only of books, but of hope. Scholars who once filled these halls wander the streets in shock, their eyes vacant, their hands trembling. Some clutch small bundles of salvaged texts, the remnants of their life's work. Others murmur aloud, reciting from memory what is gone, as though to keep it alive in voice, if not on page. Some simply sit in silence, their lips moving in prayers that sound more like grief than faith. The Mongols, for their part, do not linger over the libraries. To them, this is not cruelty, but practicality. Books weigh more than treasure. They burn hotter than timber. They clog the river when cast aside. The thought that each page carries a voice, an idea, a century does not matter. To them, the conquest is complete. What remains is waste to be cleared. And yet, you sense a strange duality. The Mongols did not hate knowledge itself. In other lands, they employed scholars. They patronized learning. But here, in Baghdad, the destruction was less about contempt than about demonstration. This was not merely a conquest of territory. It was the shattering of a symbol. Baghdad was the jewel of Islam, the beacon of learning, the pride of centuries. By casting its wisdom into the river, Hulagu ensured that no one could mistake what had happened. The jewel was shattered, the beacon extinguished. You step again to the riverbank. The Tigris moves slower now, burdened, heavy. Pages drift upon its surface like lost leaves, some caught on reeds, some spinning in eddies, some sinking slowly. You bend to pick one up, but it slips beneath the current before your hand can touch it. The river holds it now, and it is gone. The people whisper of this day for generations. They speak of the river of ink, of the sky of ash, of the silence of the libraries. They tell of how knowledge itself seemed to die in Baghdad, of how centuries collapsed in a single week. Some say the world never recovered, that what was lost here left a wound that never healed. Others argue that fragments survived, carried westward, preserved elsewhere, sparking lights in other lands. But the memory of loss remains heavier than the fragments of survival. You stand on the bank until night falls. The water glimmers faintly under the moon. Darkened, clouded, the air still carries the scent of smoke. Ash drifts softly, settling upon the river's surface like fragile snow. The city behind you moans in ruin. Fires still burning, cries still rising. Yet here, by the river, the silence is deeper. It is the silence not of death alone, but of forgetting. The House of Wisdom is gone. The libraries are silent. The books are ash and water. And Baghdad, once the heart of knowledge, now beats with emptiness. You step now into the hushed aftermath. The thunder of engines has gone quiet. The clash of steel has faded. But the silence that remains is heavier than war. Baghdad lies broken. Streets that once sang with commerce and laughter are strewn with rubble and ash. Gardens that once bloomed with roses and orange blossoms are trampled, their fountains choked with soot. The city of peace, the jewel of the Abbasids, now lies as a shadow of itself. The survivors wander. You walk among them, and you see faces pale with shock, eyes red from smoke and weeping. Families search for one another among the ruins, calling names that echo unanswered. A mother kneels beside a collapsed wall, her hands clawing at the stones, believing her child may still lie beneath. A boy, no more than 10, clutches a fragment of parchment, all that remains of his father's library, the ink smeared but held as if it were treasure. An old man sits in the dust, rocking gently, murmuring prayers over and over. His voice cracked, his mind perhaps clinging to repetition when the world no longer makes sense. The air is thick with smoke. Fires still smolder in corners, sending up columns that twist into the gray sky. The smell of charred wood and burned parchment mingles with the stench of blood and rot. Crows gather on rooftops, their wings dark against the haze, their calls sharp and harsh. Dogs prowl the streets, thin and desperate, scavenging among ruins. Even animals feel the change. The city that once fed them is now a grave. You walk the Great Bazaar, once the artery of Baghdad's wealth. Its stalls are overturned, its awnings burned. Silks lie torn and trampled in the dirt, their colors dulled by soot. Jars of spices lie shattered, pepper and cinnamon spilling into the dust, their scents overwhelmed by smoke. Merchants who once cried their wares now sit mute, staring at nothing, their livelihoods turned to ash. The mosques stand still, their domes scarred, their courtyards filled with the displaced. People gather there for shelter, for prayer, for a sense of safety that no walls can give. The imams lead prayers with trembling voices, their words carrying both comfort and despair. God is merciful, they say. God is with the suffering. The faithful repeat the words, but their eyes are hollow. They ask silently why mercy has not spared their city, why faith has not shielded them. You drift to the House of Wisdom, or what remains of it. Its halls are blackened, its shelves collapsed, its scrolls gone. The silence here is immense. Survivors pass through like mourners, heads bowed, hands brushing against the walls as though touching the bones of the dead. Some scholars gather in a corner, reciting from memory fragments of texts lost to flame and water. Their voices are soft, reverent, like prayers. They cling to the hope that memory may preserve what parchment could not. But even as they speak, they know their words cannot hold the weight of what was lost. In the palace, the gardens are trampled, fountains dry. The throne room is empty, its cushions torn, its mosaics cracked. Servants who once moved with grace now sweep rubble with bare hands, not to restore, but to survive. The caliph is gone, his lineage ended, his court scattered. The palace feels not abandoned, but hollowed, as though its spirit has fled. Survivors whisper among themselves. Some blame the caliph for pride and indecision. Others blame traitors within the council. Some say it was God's will, a punishment for sins hidden or unspoken. Others say it was simply fate, the turning of history's wheel. None of them know, but all of them feel the same truth. Their world has vanished. You walk to the riverbank again. The Tigris still flows, indifferent, carrying pages and bodies alike. Its surface is clouded, dark with ash and ink. Survivors kneel there, cupping water in their hands, drinking because they must, even as tears fall into the same stream that carries away their city's memory. A woman lifts her hands toward the river and cries aloud, her voice breaking. This water has taken our books, our men, our children. What is left for us now? No one answers her. Only the river replies, flowing on, endless, cold. Children wander the streets in silence, their games forgotten. Some clutch pieces of burned wood as toys, some drag baskets with nothing inside, some stare blankly at fires still burning. Their laughter, once so common in Baghdad's courtyards, has fallen silent. It is the silence of innocence stolen, replaced by hunger and grief. The survivors begin to bury their dead, though the task is overwhelming. Graves line the edges of the city, shallow, hurried, marked with stones. Prayers are whispered quickly, tears fall quietly, and then the living move on. Some bodies are left where they fell, too many to carry, too many to honor. Crows and dogs take them, and no one has the strength to stop it. At night, the city is darker than it has ever been. Lanterns are few, oil scarce, fires burn still, but they are wild, uncontrolled. The stars shine faintly through the smoke, distant, indifferent. Survivors huddle together in courtyards, in mosques, in broken houses. They speak little. The silence is heavier than words. The city that once glowed with light now glimmers only with embers. You drift among them, listening. A mother hums softly to a child, though her voice is weak and her eyes are wet. An old man tells a story of Baghdad's past, of caliphs and poets, of gardens and scholars, his voice trembling as though to remind himself that it was real. A boy recites verses from the Quran, his voice steady, carrying a faith that clings even when everything else has fallen. The weight of a vanished world presses on every street, every wall, every breath. Baghdad was not only a city, it was an idea, a memory, a dream of what civilization could be. To see it broken is to feel that dream falter, and yet the survivors endure. They bury their dead. They gather scraps of food. They share water. They whisper prayers. They carry fragments of books, fragments of stories, fragments of hope. They walk through ruins, but they walk still. You stand at the edge of the city, looking back. The domes are blackened, the walls breached, the river dark, but you see also the figures moving among ruins, fragile but present. History does not end, even in ruin. It bends, it scars, it carries forward. The survivors will carry it, heavy as it is. The weight of a vanished world is immense. It settles on the shoulders of those left alive. It fills the silence of the streets, the flow of the river, the smoke of the air. But within that weight, a small ember still glows, the act of survival itself. You breathe it in, heavy, aching. You feel the loss, but also the persistence. Baghdad has fallen, but memory endures. And you know that even shattered, the city will echo across centuries. You step away from the smoke and rubble, away from the shattered walls and the blackened domes. The year is still 158, but already you sense that what has happened in Baghdad will not remain here. It will echo outward, carried on the breath of survivors, on the ink of chroniclers, on the whisper of rivers. It will move through time, through memory, shaping centuries yet to come. The fall of Baghdad was not only the end of a city, it was the end of a world. The Abbasid Caliphate had stood for over 500 years, its rulers a thread linking the Muslim world from east to west. Even when their political power dwindled, the caliphs remained symbols, a center of gravity, a reminder of unity. Now that thread has snapped. You feel the silence left behind. Across the Islamic world, news spreads slowly, carried by merchants, by refugees, by letters written with shaking hands. When the news arrives, it is met with disbelief, with denial. Baghdad, the city of peace, the jewel of Islam, impossible, and yet it is true. The caliph is gone, the libraries drowned, the gardens ash. For scholars, it is a wound that bleeds for centuries. They write of the loss with grief that seeps through ink. Ibn al-Fawati, a librarian of Baghdad, survives the conquest and records fragments of what was lost. Centuries later, historians still speak of the river of ink, of the black water, of the silence that followed. The image becomes myth, but the grief is real. The house of wisdom is gone, and with it, countless works that might have shaped futures never seen. You wander westward in imagination across deserts and seas where travelers carry the story. In Cairo, in Damascus, in Cordoba, people speak of Baghdad with sorrow, as though a star has fallen from the sky. Poets write elegies for the city, verses heavy with mourning. Preachers thunder that it was divine punishment, a warning against pride, against sin, Others argue it was merely the cruelty of men, the wheel of history, turning. The debate lingers, unresolved, echoing across sermons and scrolls. The Mongols, for their part, do not see it as an end, but as a conquest among conquests. Hulagu moves on, his armies pressing further, his empire expanding. Yet even they cannot hold Baghdad's spirit. They install governors, they demand tribute, but the city never becomes theirs in soul. It lies as a scar, conquered but never truly claimed. And history twists. The Mongols themselves, within generations, adopt Islam. The descendants of those who drowned Baghdad in ink later kneel in its mosques, pray toward Mecca, recite the Quran. What was once an empire of horse and bow becomes woven into the faith it once sought to humble. A strange irony, a reminder that conquest reshapes conquerors as much as conquered. You move further still, beyond the 13th century. The fall of Baghdad becomes a symbol, retold whenever people speak of fragile civilizations. It is cited as proof of the impermanence of power, of the fragility of knowledge, of the need to guard what seems eternal. In every era, people look back and see in Baghdad a reflection of their own fears, that no city, no empire, no golden age is safe from collapse. The memory lingers in the way rivers are described. When poets speak of water running dark, they recall the Tigris of 158. When scholars warn of knowledge lost, they think of the House of Wisdom. When rulers fear decline, they whisper of the Abbasids. Baghdad becomes not only a place, but a lesson, a parable, a shadow, and yet the city lives on. You walk through its streets centuries later, rebuilt, scarred but alive. The Mongol sack did not erase it entirely. People returned, markets reopened, mosques resounded again with prayer. Baghdad endured, though never again with the same brilliance, never again the unchallenged center of the world. Its golden age was gone, but its pulse remained. Even in ruin, Baghdad influenced what came after. Survivors carried fragments of knowledge outward. Books hidden, pages memorized, ideas retold. These fragments lit lamps elsewhere, shaping learning in Cairo, in Damascus, in Samarkand. Some knowledge was lost forever, but some was saved, scattered like seeds in the wind. And seeds, even when scattered, can grow. You stand at the edge of time itself and listen to the echoes. You hear chroniclers writing by candlelight, their words trembling with grief. You hear poets weaving verses of mourning, their rhymes sharp with sorrow. You hear imams preaching of punishment and warning, their voices echoing across courtyards. You hear silence too, the silence of works never read, discoveries never made, songs never sung. The silence itself is part of the memory, as loud as any voice. Baghdad's fall also echoes in the Mongols' own fate. Their empire, vast and unstoppable, fractures within a century. Hulagu's line holds Persia, but the dream of a single Mongol world collapses. The horsemen who seemed eternal fade, just as the Abbasids did. Power is never eternal. Empire is only a guest upon the earth. You look back once more at 158, at the fires in the river, at the silence of the libraries, at the caliph led in chains. You see it now not as a single moment, but as a turning point. A reminder that knowledge is fragile, that power is fleeting, that cities are mortal, and yet also a reminder that memory persists, that stories endure, that even in ruin, Baghdad lives in the minds of those who remember. The echoes stretch to the present. Today, when people speak of the Mongols, they recall not only their conquests, but also the fall of Baghdad. When they speak of lost knowledge, they recall the House of Wisdom. When they speak of empire and decline, they recall the Abbasids. The memory shapes how we understand history itself. You pause, breathing in the weight of centuries. You feel the dust of ruins beneath your feet, the murmur of the river in your ears, the silence of forgotten pages in your heart. You feel the echo of Baghdad in every story of rise and fall, in every city that believes itself eternal, in every library that holds the fragile breath of human thought. Baghdad fell in 1258, but its echo has never stopped. The story softens now. The fires fade. The echoes of hooves and cries dissolve into the distance. Baghdad drifts back into shadow, not as a ruin, not as a jewel, but as a memory, quiet, fragile, carried gently across centuries. You no longer stand among broken walls or beside rivers of ink. You are here again in the present, where the night holds you with steadier arms. The weight of history loosens its grip. The voices of scholars, soldiers, and survivors grow faint, like smoke thinning into the sky. What remains is only calm. You breathe slowly. Inhale the coolness of air. Exhale the heaviness of thought. The story has been long, but you do not need to hold it all. You may let it slip away. The past is safe where it belongs, and you are safe where you are. Let the rubble become mist. Let the river become only water again. Let the silence of the libraries become the silence of your room, still and restful. Baghdad will remain in memory, but you do not need to carry its sorrow. You may rest. The night is wide. The stars are steady. Your body is heavier now. Your breath slower. Sleep is already near, waiting gently, patient as always. If your eyes close, let them close. If your thoughts wander, let them wander. You are free to drift, to dream, to leave the story behind. History does not mind. It will still be here when you return. And so the dust settles. The river quiets. The city sleeps. Good night. Sweet dreams.